Hello and welcome into the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and today we're getting an update on First Nordic Metals. First Nordic is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker FNM and on the OTCQB under the ticker FNMCF. And I'm joined today with the CEO, Taj Singh, and the president, Adam Cegielski. Taj, Adam, great to have you guys back on the show. And you guys are actually coming in live from Mar-a-Lago at an event you're at, a high net worth investor event and conference that you've coordinated, part of a roadshow you're doing through parts of Florida to talk to investors. Adam, I'll throw this over to you. I'm just curious, what is the environment like there at an event like that where you have kind of more of a boutique event, but more of a focused event on generalists that haven't traditionally looked at gold companies before?
Hey, Shad, thanks for having us. Yeah, it's I think for the first time in a long time, people are generally talking about gold and understanding the discussion a lot more than they would have the last few years. I think a lot of different elections have happened here, some new governments in place over the last 3, 4 months across very different countries that we're dealing with. It just really seems that you've got a sudden understanding that gold is 34, 3,500. It's classified as a true risk aversion asset. And we're getting tremendous interest. And again, a lot of these generalists, they don't really understand the difference between investing in development companies and the leverage you can get. So it's been incredibly refreshing. And we're typically talking to a lot of educated, sophisticated institutional investors. But I mean, you've got an incredibly savvy group of business people here that have been very successful in their careers, obviously. And for us, we just think we have a top tier story that can get the attention of some very influential people.
Well, and it's a compelling story. You guys have done a good job raising the capital, doing a lot of the targeting, doing a lot of geochem, base of till drilling. And to that point, Taj, bring into the discussion here, you just put out some results to the market on April 30th, just highlighting your top of bedrock drill results. And so this is where you're just going through and really getting things geared up for the diamond drilling program at your Storjuktan project at the Nippas target. So I know this is a key area of focus this year for you as a company. Talk to us about what you learned from the bot drilling, but then also more importantly, when does the diamond drilling start up and why is the team so excited about this Nippus target?
Yeah, thanks, Shad. Thanks for having us. Yeah, and jumping into the Storjuktan project, the Nippus target has always been one that's been exciting for us. Very good size at almost 5 kilometers, kind of consolidated on the Storjuktan project. And we had done quite a bit of geochemistry work already there. We had done some bot drilling over a couple of years prior, but this is the year where we really finished off kind of most of the corridor as much as we could. There's some areas we are going to get to later for bot drilling, but it just confirmed more and more gold mineralization here. So we knew the Pathfinder elements were there. Now we know gold's there, kind of ticking the box on our hypothesis. And we've got kind of three trends here now, very obvious, clear trends that line up well with the geophysics and the structural work we've done. And we expected it, but it's nice to actually get it. And here we go. We're ready to drill now. We know exactly where to go. We've planned out the first 5,000 meters at Nippus, and then we'll be hitting that. We'll be starting that probably in a few weeks. But yeah, it continues past the stage gate processes to move it towards diamond drilling. So we're very excited.
Yeah, it's an exciting time for the company to get on the ground with the diamond drills. I think a lot of people know that you got to do the earlier stage work, but the market really gets excited when they start seeing the drill meters come back in and the assays come back in. So that project's about to get started. But I think it's also worth pointing out, you mentioned Storjuktan's a 5 kilometer trend, and there's a lot more. It's not a one trick pony. It's not just Nippus. There's a big land package and a lot of other compelling targets. So maybe just speak to the prospectivity of the overall Storjuktan project.
Yeah, listen, it's a huge land package, 25,000 hectare land package. We've done till sampling on, I'd say 30, 40% of it now. So we're probably going to hit it with another 20 plus thousand samples over the summer this year. We're just actually in the process of now getting all of our students hired and set up to continue to get all this very important data for us. And it's part of the process. Sure, drilling's great when you get to it, but you got to do all of the steps necessary to, make sure your diamond drill meters are going to be efficiently used. So Storjuktan project, I think it surprised us, but not really. But in January, we had already kind of started identifying some potential new targets based on Pathfinder elements. We'd sample and use the XRF to kind of find Pathfinder elements that are typical of the gold signatures on the belt. And then we now sample them, and we're getting back gold, like very high gold values on multiple big targets. There's three large targets in the south. We call them the southern targets when we released the results earlier this year. And then there's actually some very interesting targets in the north too. So, it's part of our process here to continue to bring in new targets and move them more towards drilling. We're up to 7 or 8 big targets here, and I think that number should continue to grow. And some targets will make it to the next stage, and some won't. But I think it's such a target-rich environment. We'll continue to do our work to be able to take these towards testing.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to follow along and exciting to hear you got 5,000 meters planned for the Nippus target to kick things off. I know that you've been busy also over at your Paubäcken project, though. Two main targets of focus, the Aida target and the Harpson target. Let's start with Aida because you've been doing some drilling there. I'm just curious, how is that going? How many meters are you drilling at the Aida target for this program this year? And more importantly, when can we start expecting to see some results come back into the market?
Yeah, at Aida, we started drilling kind of mid-late February, and as noted in the Nippas press release we just put out, generally in the area, it's been an unusually mild winter. So we had some swampy, boggy conditions in various parts of the terrain that were a little bit hard to get to. So it slowed down our productivity a little bit, but we're back up and running now. The thaw has happened and the boggy conditions have passed us. But as you know, the Aida drilling, we planned an initial 5,000 meters of drilling. We're well through that, but I think we'll probably be done within 6 to 8 weeks there, and then we'll continue to plan out the next meters at Aida or looking at some other targets too. So yeah, we're moving well through there. We expect to get these in the next few weeks, the first batch, and you also really want to put out these results in meaningful batches where you can actually put a cross section together, put a trend together, not just one-off hole with some drill intercepts. So we want to be cognizant of that. And yeah, it's exciting to see the flurry of activity happening on the Gold Line Belt for sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll be looking forward to that first batch of assays when they come out, and we'll dig into those together, guys. But you have another compelling target at Paubäcken that you'll be doing some work on, and that's the Harpson target. So what is the exploration plan for Harpson this year?
So Harpson, we eventually want to get to diamond drilling this year as well, as we had kind of earlier guided to. And that kind of, I think in the next week to two, you're gonna see results from Harpson, both bot drilling as well as a lot of geochemistry till samples coming out and further defining what we have there at Harpson, and then ultimately to get that ready for diamond drilling. Harpson's about 5-6 kilometers kind of north of Aida, northeast. So we're looking forward to getting to that. And then there's a contiguous target called the Brokohan target. Often we kind of include it with Harpson, but it's kind of a separate target that's about 2-3 kilometers long right now and kind of strike potential. We were going to be bot drilling that in Q1, and again, a lot of the weather we had to deal with and the effects it had on the terrain made us push off the bot drilling on Brokohan. So it's going to be coming out first as Harpson results. We were able to get the bot drilling there done, and then Brokohan, we're going to start working on bot drilling that at some point here in the summer. But there's almost too many targets and lots of work to do, so we'll continue to be dynamic on our planning process here.
Well, and Taj, just one more follow-up on the overall program, because you do need to be dynamic and kind of look at the results and prioritize constantly what the best targets are. You're going to put 5,000 meters on Nippus and 5,000 on Aida, but I know that you're working on an overall 25,000 meter exploration program. So is the next steps of this just waiting to see some of these batches come in before you proceed, or are there other targets that you still want to get to? Because there's still a lot of meters that you could deploy here.
Yeah, listen, Aida for sure is going to go through the 5,000. I mean, I think our plan was for sure 10,000 there, so that's pretty much a given. We were very much liking what we're seeing. And Nippus, it's the first 5,000 meters exactly. So I think there's going to be meters added to that, hopefully, based on success. So yeah, and that's why we kind of have planned it this way. It's kind of like for the whole belt over 3-4 targets, there's this kind of allowance, and that will evolve and change based on the phase one first 5,000 meters, and then okay, let's move to a phase two, the next 5,000 meters. So that'll evolve, but yeah, we're still planning to put a bunch of these meters in for sure.
All right. Well, I think you're starting to get noticed by more and more institutional investors. And Adam, something came across my desk from your team showing that Roth Capital had just picked up coverage with a nice price target. So maybe just talk to not just Roth, but just there's a number of financial institutions that have been picking up coverage on First Nordic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to my original comment that gold is suddenly everyone's realizing, where is my gold exposure? Do I own the ETFs? Do I own the equities? And when you look at the institutional investors and like a firm like Roth, who's probably one of the largest banks in the United States that does sub-billion-dollar companies, they're looking for companies that they can represent and companies that, institutional investors can write 10, 15, $20 million checks for. And that's sort of a small pool of companies that can actually justify that kind of an investment. So Roth is a relationship that we've been working on for over a year now. We've developed that relationship over the last few conferences. We've seen them at Beaver Creek, and Mike Niehauser is a great analyst. He's picked up some really high quality stories in Canada, a few of them that have done very well. And, he's really written a spectacular piece here. And I think it just goes to show that, we have this incredible exploration portfolio that gives you this exploration blue sky potential to really multiply the potential at Barsele. And you've got this asset that clearly, once there's some sort of direction, between us and the partnership we have with Agnico, is going to be an incredibly exciting story. One of probably the most exciting stories, obviously in Europe, but maybe even globally. And it's very rare to have a project and the potential of what we have in a first, world country, a tier one jurisdiction, where it just really feels like between the price of gold, the gold equities starting to pick up a little bit here in the political situation. You've got these stars aligning beautifully and everyone's starting to pick up on it. So hopefully we can, update the market with some exciting corporate updates between now and the end of the year. And I think you'll probably see 3 or 4 other research reports, come out, between now and probably end of the summer.
Well, it's exciting to see the recognition by the financial sector, because when we talked last time, we were talking about Haywood Capital and Ventum Capital also picking up coverage. So nice to see a string of institutional funds covering the company and covering the sector in more detail. And to that point, you guys are at Mar-a-Lago now. You're talking to investors there that maybe haven't traditionally been invested in gold equities, but you're also going to be busy. You're going to have a site visit, and you're also going to be at some upcoming conferences. So maybe just talk about, Adam, some of the other events that you're going to be at where people can find you.
Yeah, we're going to be at a conference here in Fort Lauderdale on the weekend that we're going to be joining with John Fennick and his group. That's second year of that conference. And, I think we had a really good experience there last year. So it ties in well with this Florida tour we're doing. We've got the site visit. So we're going to obviously do some European marketing before and after the site visit. I think we'll be very active in the summer as well. We're going to be probably live with a lot of drilling results coming out. And I don't think it's going to be your typical seasonal market. I think investors are ready to make decisions. And, we did sort of a non-deal roadshow maybe a month ago. And the demand we had for participation in our story was very high. We've had excellent feedback. And so whereas 6 months ago, maybe, it was a little cooler, we can definitely feel the temperature rising. We've got a whole bunch of new funds that we've been introduced to that we hadn't actually heard much from before. And I think we're slowly starting to see new capital enter the space. I think we've had a tremendous inflow into physical gold. I think you can see the ETFs have really picked up in the last 12 months. And I think that's going to translate to, the Agnicos of the world, who a year ago were maybe $50, $60, have, tripled in market cap and share price. And I think you're slowly going to start to see this trickle down effect into the developers and the explorers. I think more so the developers. So we're very excited about what we're seeing. It gets us more excited and motivated and energized to continue to work hard. And I think we're going to have a very busy summer, working our story and getting out to as many investors as we can.
Well, Taj, I'll throw it over to you for the final word. For people listening in that see all this activity in the sector, see a lot of these funds getting positioned, maybe they're newer to your story, how would you summarize the value proposition for First Nordic Metals when you take into account the underlying value there at Barsele, your JV partner, Agnico Eagle, and yourselves working that project, but then the whole gold line belt, Paubäcken, Storjuktan, and all the other targets? Maybe summarize for people listening in, what is the value proposition for First Nordic Metals?
I think the value proposition is this is the right place, right time, right team. You're in a first world country that's become very pro mining recently, with a flurry of kind of M&A activity happening in the neighboring Finland, but Sweden now is getting very hot. 3 mines permitted last year, so it's definitely the right place. We've got an asset that underpins our value, and we're only getting the heavily discounted value for that, even of the actual value that it could represent. And even if you look at analyst research reports, the Barsele project, which is close to 2.5 million ounces now, and I think with a very clear path to growing very materially over that 2.5 million ounces. Great shareholder in Agnico, one of the best gold companies in the world. And then on top of that, what other junior do you know that controls a belt right? 80 kilometers of belt only owned by one company, surrounding a 2.5 million ounce deposit that really still has a lot of room to grow, as I talked about. So are there 3, 4, or 5 more deposits out there? It just hasn't been explored. This is one of the last belts I can think of, the greenstone belts, which are prolific for gold exploration worldwide. One of the last ones that's really had any real work done on it. There's other deposits there, and our goal is to find them and put together a district, put together a camp here. And we're really excited about the place and time, and we know we put the right team together. So that's kind of the value proposition we see for First Nordic.
All right, guys. Well, we'll wrap it up there, but exciting times for the company. Lots of news flow on tap. We'll be looking out for some of those batched results from the Aida Target. The drill's getting onto the ground in a couple of weeks over at Nippus. Lots of exploration work to report on as this year unfolds. Good luck at the conferences, guys. And as always, looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks for having us, Chad.
Thanks.